Good evening. The Public Works Committee will come to order. We have a general agenda and a consent agenda. As a housekeeping matter, in case anyone is here for this item, just want to let you know that we are postponing to our December meeting item G4, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority Comprehensive Operation Analysis. There are routes in 2 of our wards that are still being tweaked. And so we will not be hearing that today. Is there anything else that needs to be rescheduled? Very well, then let's first consider the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be taken off consent agenda for discussion?
If none, I move approval of the balance.
Second.
All right. If there's no discussion, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved, and we will move to item G1, please.
Item G1, public hearing on the proposed renaming of a disconnected segment of North Main Street to Angelo Brothers Avenue.
All right, and this is a public hearing, I believe, today. So if we can have the staff presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as you know, there are occasions when there are disconnected segments of roadway that are identified by staff, now in the county's GIS department, previously in the city's planning department. And when those segments are identified, one of the issues that we have is the response from the public safety departments to be able to get to those properties, because if there's a disconnected segment, it makes it sometimes difficult to know how the emergency vehicle is supposed to get there. Are they going by the first disconnected segment or the second disconnected segment? So what we have here is a situation where a portion of Main Street north of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive is disconnected from other sections of Main, and there's a recommendation that it be renamed for the Angelo Brothers, who have a facility on that property, or excuse me, on that roadway. And so Angelo's Brothers Avenue is the proposed name for the street segment. There's a diagram in your agenda package, and we have representatives here from the county if there are any questions.
All right. And please remind me, I always forget this, is this hearing at the committee level or at the full council?
Because it's a road closure, the hearing is at the committee level. I'm sorry, because it's a road renaming, the hearing is at the committee level. Road closures, the hearing is at the council level.
All right. And do we then make a recommendation to the full council, or is our action final in committee?
It's a recommendation to the full council, but you conduct the hearing.
Very good. Is there anyone who is here to speak on the proposed renaming of the disconnected segment of North Main Street to Angelo Brothers Avenue? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask whether there are any questions or comments or motion from members.
No questions at this time. I make a motion to approve the item.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? If not, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That's unanimous, and it will go to the full council. Item number 2, please.
Item G2, downtown street study presentation.
And I know that we have presenters here from Davenport Engineering. Mr. Turner, would you introduce our guest, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we have John Davenport with Davenport Engineering and Frank Amajaya, I believe, or Amenya, excuse me, and they will be doing the presentation. As you know, the background on this is that the Chamber of Commerce and some others got together when NCDOT was considering what they were going to do relative to the closure of ramps on Business 40 associated with the project, and the Chamber came in with several recommendations. Your directive to us was to evaluate those. We hired Davenport Engineering in order to do a full engineering analysis of the viability and the cost implications of the recommendations from the Chamber.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Davenport, would you step up and, again, for the record, gentlemen, if you just give us your name and your professional address and give us your briefing, please.
All right. John Davenport, 305 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Frank Amenya with Davenport, 304 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
All right. So Greg told me we need to move along with the slides. We do have quite a few, but Most will be for illustration and not for conversation. Unless you have questions, we're going to try to get through. I know that you guys need to take care of other business. So as Greg said, that the study was conducted, the chamber had questions, and primarily we were focusing on could we convert Liberty and Main and First and Second to two-way, and when? Can we do it before the construction of Business 40, or did we have to wait till afterwards? We also had other issues, as you can see on the screen here, looking at parking, traffic calming, wayfinding, and pedestrian and bikes. So we wanted to look at, are these things feasible? What are the impacts? How much will it cost? And that's kind of what we're presenting to you now. First of all, can the conversion be completed before Business 40 is done? No, we can't do that. There's a lot of traffic on Business 40. We're going to be relying a lot on the downtown streets to handle that, the surface streets to handle that traffic when the roads are closed. And so it is simply not feasible to make those conversions from a traffic standpoint prior to the closure of Business 40.
Mr. Davenport,
Yes, sir.
do you mean that it can't be made while the closure is happening, or it can't be made before the closure begins?
Both.
Okay, so the recommendation would be to consider two-waying after 40 reopens.
Yes, sir.
All right, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. And essentially what I'm saying is with the reliance that we're going to need to have to get people east and west through downtown, we have to have the optimal capacity. So the recommendation here is to if you did want to expedite, would be to finalize the planning and design during the construction of Business 40 such that as soon as you reopen, that you could go to a construction phase of making these changes. All right, so First and Second Street, you see highlighted in green. What sections can we convert and what sections do we have problems with? Everything on the green lines going east and west are areas that can be converted fairly easily. There were a few sections that we could not convert for traffic reasons, primarily between Spruce and Main on First Street and Spruce and Town Run Lane on Second Street. And this is primarily because if you zoom in, the blocks are very close together. Let me back up. One of the things that we had to look at when we were asked to do this study is we need to work within the existing footprint of the road. We're not taking buildings down. We're not moving curb lines. We want to try to keep this very cost effective. In order to do that, there were compromises that had to be made, and these are the areas that we're talking about where you've got very short blocks and the road's narrow, and you just simply do not have enough room to put all the lanes that would be necessary to convert those areas to two-way. Another issue is the realignment. If you look at the inset at First Street and Main, that question was asked by staff, and if you look at that, First Street is one-way headed westbound at the top corner, but then you see how it's significantly misaligned for the eastbound traffic. So, unless we're going to buy the funeral home, we can't make that connection. So that, again, that's another area why we had to preserve the one-way pair condition. One other thing is that because the city has decided to make Cherry and Marshall be the main interchange into downtown, the traffic that will be projected on Cherry and Marshall make it difficult to make some of those conversions. So you have a lot of traffic on Cherry and Marshall going northbound to southbound. What that means is the streets that are crossing, we need to make sure that they operate well. And if you have traffic going two ways, you can just think about it. And we'll just look at 4th Street, for example. On 4th Street, during the rush hours, you can't make left turns because if someone sits there and makes a left during the peak hour, no traffic will ever move. And we can't have that condition on 1st and 2nd, as well as 4th and 5th and every other street, or you just couldn't get east and west downtown. So you guys follow me on? Okay, very good. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so we talked about that section. I do have a video if anybody's interested, but I think I'll keep going for right now and we'll come back to it.
Is it going to be easier for you to take all questions as we go along, or should we hold large?
If you have a question, I can go ahead and try to answer it now.
Basically, my question is, given the projected need to retain significant one-way sections, what advantage do we get out of two-way the, the sections that are recommended?
Well, if you go back, the Holly Avenue neighborhood gets two-way streets. So the neighborhood area goes back to more of a traditional neighborhood feel. And you take some of the traffic out of it. So we keep one way in the downtown area, but then once you get beyond downtown, the neighborhoods can return more to a neighborhood feeling.
So really the advantage is to that specific neighborhood?
Yes, in that section.
What about on the east side?
On the east side, as we get into the Liberty and Main portion of it, because we can convert Liberty and Main in their entireties, both all the way through. So you basically can get back to a two-way condition circulating around the courthouse and all those areas.
All right. So the two-way of First and Second would match the two-way then of Liberty and Main?
That's right.
All right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So we'll fast forward back over to where we were. Okay, one of the areas that we did end up spending some additional time in working with was at Broad and Peters Creek. So if you see on the left, the original concept that we presented was we had a short section of Second Street that was one way with some parking we were adding. And with the public input that we received, there were lots of folks that wanted to be able to have two-way all the way up to Broad. We were asked by city staff to consider an alternative that had minimal right-of-way impacts. And so the one presented on the right was the one that everyone settled on. So essentially, we were able to preserve the two-way all the way up to Broad Street and also handle the traffic. If you imagine coming off Peters Creek Parkway now and coming up to Broad, the majority of the traffic will now turn left if we make this conversion. They won't go straight. So they won't go through the neighborhood, they'll turn left, and they'll come in on 4th of District. Any questions? Okay. When you were asking Councilmember Bessie about some of the benefits, we have some parking we can add along First Street also. So these are just some slides to demonstrate some of those things. Bike and pedestrian accommodations. Even though we're not converting all of First Street to two-way, we are able to enhance the sidewalk there in front of the BB&T building and provide a better connection to the proposed or the realignment of the Greenway. So this is something we're able to do because we don't need all the lanes that are out there now. We're recommending high visibility crosswalks and bulbs. They are in place in some places in the city, but that we are recommending some additional places, bike racks and signage. If you look on the right, that pavement marking is what we call sharrow. For those that are cyclists, you're familiar with that. Why didn't we do bike lanes on First and Second? Simply because there isn't enough pavement. It's just enough room for one car in each direction. And so in situations like that, you utilize the sharrow to indicate that there's a possibility you have a cyclist on the road, so you have to share the road with people that are riding bikes. In areas where you have enough width and you want to have a separate bike lane. We weren't able to identify those areas within downtown simply because we were struggling to balance parking, bikes, pedestrians, and of course cars without moving any buildings.
Mr. Davenport, you mentioned some additional parking on First Street. Would it be fairly comparative to what I'm seeing here on this picture on the right-hand side? Is that how the additional parking?
Parallel parking,
Parallel.
yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And you'll see throughout the presentation, especially on Liberty and Main, we were able to add quite a bit of on-street parking, which we know that's important to the businesses in that area. And also along Fifth Street, we'll get to that too. All right, so Liberty and Main, I mentioned to you the feasibility of converting to two-way is we can do all of that, the entire corridor. One area that we had a lot of discussion with was down towards Old Salem. Right now you've got that Y, and traffic speeds are fairly high. We've looked at several alternatives we presented to the public. The one on the left is the one that the majority of the public preferred benefit for that concept is that it slows traffic down as you come into the downtown CBD. So it gets rid of that slip ramp. That makes pedestrian crossings and some of the other things that need to happen, cyclists, a lot safer in that area. And the good thing about this alternative is it stays within the footprint of the right-of-way. It doesn't require buying any additional property. I've got highlighted some areas on Liberty and Main where we got some additional parking. One area, if you look at the top right-hand corner, and it's hard to see, but in the Millennium Center, we're able to add some parking adjacent to it. On Liberty Street right now, you don't have that on the west side, so we're able to add that. Also some parking on Main Street along the area where Brookstown is. Again, we're looking at for bike impaired, high visibility crosswalks, and the same type of treatment we would do on First and Second. Another area of focus, Fifth Street. One thing the Chamber was concerned about was getting some parking on Fifth Street between Trade Street and Marshall. Cherry. So with our study, we had to analyze, could we take a lane off of Fifth Street and be able to do that? And the answer was yes. So we are able to add some parking along Fifth Street. That's, if you look at this area, this is along the frontage where Mass General and some of the other developments going on. We did preserve a right turn lane up at Cherry Street. Another area they asked about was traffic calming. One area that we picked out that could stand a little work was Marshall Street going southbound between 4th Street and 2nd. That is a very long block there in front of the plaza. And essentially because 3rd Street is cut off at Cherry Street, you don't have another street that interrupts the traffic flow. And so because of that, it feels as if people are driving faster in that area. One of the things that we talked about was bringing in the curbs in that area so that it would feel a little bit more narrow. But right now, if you look at it, it's a very wide road, and essentially there's nothing to stop you from driving fast other than someone writing your ticket. So we wanted to make it a little bit more, a little less inviting for people to feel like they need to drive fast. And so we talked about bringing the curbs out in that area. And that's what this is, an illustration. It's not like that now. So we bring the bulbs out, put some trees in, and make it feel a little bit more narrow. Another area that had a lot of discussion was originally not in this project, but it's another project we're working on, which is the area surrounding the convention center. Cherry Street, along the convention center side, there was discussion about how we need to treat. There are 3 lanes now, and we looked at whether we were going to take a lane off of Cherry, and if we did, which side did we do it? Ultimately, the decision was made to take the lane on the side right adjacent to the convention center, provide some parking, and provide some green space, trees, or whatever plantings. And then there's also some pretty significant bulbs, pedestrian bulb outs. I don't have the pointer. Can you see my pointer? Yeah. In this area, this is where the main entrance will be for the convention center. And just to give you some perspective, right now, walking across 5th Street, it's about, 45 feet or something like that. And we're taking it with this concept down to, Greg, help me, 28 feet? Something like that.
26, 28, somewhere.
Yeah, so we're basically reducing the distance that you have to walk across the street. And we're trying to encourage people to cross and access the convention center at that point versus walking out of Starbucks or whatever and walking straight across 5th Street, which is what they do now. So some of this would be probably done under the convention center, other parts would be done later, but overall be a significant improvement for pedestrians and traffic in that area. One other component was we were asked to look at the ballpark, how do we get people in and out during the closure and afterwards, so we did provide a plan to the city for that. So it all boils down to how much is it going to cost. And we've given you line items here. based on our understanding of what would be necessary, First and Second Street conversion is $2.5 million. That's mainly traffic signals and resurfacing with some right-of-way. Liberty and Main is 3.3. You have more traffic signals. Fifth Street between Cherry and Trade is about $125,000. It's resurfacing mainly. Marshall, and Second, the bulb outs is about $50,000, and then the work that would be done on Cherry and Marshall between 4th and 6th, the on-street parking loading zones, that area is about $200,000. It excludes the improvements that would be done under the Convention Center renovation project. So all total, if this all were to be approved, it would cost around $6.1 million to make these changes and to have them in place. So that concludes essentially our presentation. The next steps then would be the approval of your committee and the city council, and then moving forward with design so that the plans would be, I guess, what you call shovel ready when the money does come.
Questions? Comments?
Just one, thank you for your time, your diligence and effort of you and your staff on this work. I know that there are many, many stakeholders in the community who've been waiting to see this information and kind of see where we go from here. One question in particular is just some of the conversations I've had with some of the stakeholders on Liberty Street and in the Liberty Street area, as things are currently now very much kind of on an upward trend in development in the area, around how that, if we're moving towards the two-way on Liberty in terms of the pedestrian friendliness of how we continue to move that, the on-street parking pieces, and I know you said when you saw the First and Second Street ones, those are the same type of things that you would be recommending to happen along Liberty in Maine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we broke them out only because you could decide, well, we want to do Liberty and Main and not First and Second, or vice versa. And you could do that. You don't have to do all of them at one time. But we would recommend keeping the same theme as far as, I mean, there are opportunities to integrate art features and whatever else you want. We didn't go into all that. We just did the bare bones conversions.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Davenport, it seems like today I've been kind of fixated on parking because I feel like, I've started to visit other cities and see kind of how the resurgence of their downtown has transformed kind of how they do business in the city. So we need people parking, getting out of their cars, walking downtown, spending money in the shops. So whether it's a parking deck, whether it's parallel parking, whatever the case may be, we need more parking spaces. If you don't have an answer to this question now, you can get it to me sometime. I'm just curious, how many additional parking spaces, according to your plan, will be allowed in downtown? Naturally, we need parking. Do you have an idea? We won't nail you to it, but...
It is in the document, but it's not in my short-term memory. So I have to email that to you. Will you going to try to find it, Frank? Yes. He's working on it.
Oh, it'd be good to know that.
We are adding parking, and that was a main focus, is try to get as much on-street parking as possible. The city has a lot of parking and decks. That's wonderful. But for storefronts, the on-street parking is really what makes things work. To be able to get that motorist that can drop in and take care of business and keep going, because people aren't going to try to find a deck unless they work downtown.
And I think restaurants have done a good job downtown, but some of the retail shops have struggled a little bit. But I think if people are able to get in and out, it's good for business all the way around the board.
I think from a business perspective, Liberty and Main would probably have more of an impact on the downtown community than First and Second, just because how much of First and Second we're going to have to leave as one way. However, the overall course of the study was to look at Holly Avenue and that neighborhood and how we could help them as well. But certainly the Liberty and Main, converting those to two-way and adding parking, because once you get rid of the interchange at Liberty and Main, you take a lot of traffic off of those roads, and they can be converted back to the type of streets that they were back in the day when you can have parking, on-street parking.
That's good news. Thank you.
I'd be interested, this is probably a question for staff, on the funding sources.
Future bonds, The motor vehicle privilege fee has an option now for cities to go up by an additional amount. So those are the two that off the top of my head are a possibility, but obviously you're talking about several years in the future, so you'd have some opportunities to pursue options like bonds, but they obviously take some time.
Sure. So we don't have anywhere in our current budget this $6 million.
No, sir.
I don't have any of it.
All right. Anything else? Now, this is an information item today. Do we have a proposed timetable for further review?
As you say, it's information. We wanted to take the temperature of the committee to see what your desire was regarding the basic concept. Then if you're supportive of the concept, we would have to come back to you with some options, as you say, for funding, and that would probably be 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
I like what I see so far, and I think it addresses the questions I've heard in the community, and so, yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I'd certainly like to move forward. Again, I'd just like to have that question answered about the parking spaces. If we're going to ask for a little bit over $6 million from the taxpayers, it's good to show them exactly what they're getting for their bucks, which is an improvement to everyone.
Yeah, the price tag's a little steep, but I think the concepts are good.
Yeah, we'll get a summary of it for you.
Yeah, so I think you've got consensus from the committee members who are here that the concepts are generally what we would agree are appropriate.
And we'll bring it back sometime in calendar year 2016 for your consideration.
Mr. Davenport, gentlemen, thank you very much for your work and your presentation today.
Fine
We
job.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's item number 2, G3, please.
Item G3, Airport Commission of Forsyth County requests to reduce stormwater impervious surface billing. This item was continued from the October meeting of the Public Works Committee.
Okay, just a summary here. This was put on our consent agenda last month at the request of, I believe, the Airport Commission, and it was on the consent agenda because I personally misunderstood the position of our council on this. I had been under the misimpression that our council was recommending the change as opposed to saying that we had the option to make the change. You know, and 2 of our committee members pulled it off consent, and my error was discovered. So we rescheduled it as a general agenda item for full discussion. That is today, and we invited the Airport Commission to come and present their case. Mr. Turner, do we have representation today?
They're not here, so.
Well, I would, frankly, I would be inclined to postpone it to a later time when it is convenient for the Airport Commission to send a representative and discuss their viewpoint with us. Do we have different?
I support that thought unless they have expressed an unwillingness to come and speak.
Our staff contacted the administration, and they said they would consider sending someone, but we did not get any confirmation as to who that might be or a commitment that they absolutely would be here.
Do we believe that a postponement might allow them to have some time to send someone?
I don't have a good feeling for the answer to that question.
If this is acceptable to the committee, let me suggest this, that we postpone, that we pull the item from the discussion and that we hold it until we receive further communication from the commission. If they want to come in and discuss the request with us, we'll be happy to do that. Is that?
I'd make a request, as the
Please.
chairman, if you would send a letter on behalf of the committee, just asking
Inviting them, yeah.
that they be present, and then you'll know, and you'll get the feel for the climate of whether they want to attend or not.
Very good. Mr. Montgomery.
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all, but would just make a comment in reference to this overall and just from my knowledge of this request, and not always willing in terms of when we're having these dialogues in terms of what's our cost benefit of what we're doing and then what we get on the other side of that. And so I'm having not heard from them directly on this, I'm open to the conversation. It's not something I'm closed to, but just want to have the conversation with those.
Certainly. Yeah. Very good. And thank you to staff for doing the research on how other cities treat this. There appears to be some mixture, but not necessarily a prevailing tendency among other North Carolina cities with airports to exempt these impervious surfaces from the fee. So I think we're we're open to discussion, but we're not inclined to move without discussion.
Understood.
All right, and thank you very much. Now that's everything that was on our agenda that we didn't postpone. I would note that you got a memo from Mr. Turner and Mr. Rowe. No, I'm sorry, from Mr. Harden, our Sustainability Program Manager. I had picked up some information during the Nashville conference, NLC, about the possibility of a grant to do research on soft costs involved in installation of solar systems. And Mr. Turner made inquiries with Mr. Harden, our Sustainability Program Manager, and we discovered that we have recently done an analysis similar to what those grants would fund, made some adjustments to the soft costs, and therefore there would not be that functionality in our applying for the grant to reconsider that this soon.
That's correct.
I would be interested, however, in assigning to a future meeting. It's not urgent, but sometime, in the next few months, I would like to see the information we have on how many of these systems we have going in Winston-Salem, so that we can get a feel for what actually users are experiencing here, where it's happening. If it is not as broadly distributed as we would like, what are the barriers that we could work on? And also some information on what city facilities have been considered for solar photovoltaic, and whether we're moving forward on any of those. If not, why have we not incorporated that option? This is not accusatory. It's just a matter of what have we as a city looked at in this? What are the pros and cons? What are the barriers to us? How might we make more use of this technology? It seems that the costs of solar photovoltaic are going down on an ongoing basis, and it's becoming more and more competitive with other electric sources. And so we ought to be considering this as fully as possible as part of our sustainability plan.
Happy to bring a report back.
Thank you very much. Anything else before this committee, Mr. Montgomery?
Request, and staff has gotten me this information in the past, but I'm going to ask for maybe just a little bit more comprehensive information. And I do believe that Councilman McIntosh has inquired in the same realm around what Greensboro has in place with their heat bus route that goes around in reference to the campuses there. What I'd like to see, and there's been information that we've been presented in the past, what, from a cost perspective, if we were able to get universities in the community to commit, because that's how they support theirs. They have the universities pay into helping support the route that's there, that circulates, the dollar amounts of what that would cost to be able to have a similar type of circulation amongst the campuses within the community. It's been something I've had some more recent inquiries in reference to, and want to, again, take a look at what that would look like, and understanding that there would have to be commitment from the universities to make anything like that happen.
Be happy to bring a report back.
Okay. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
All right. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.